The BLON BL-03 is one of those hi-fi products which seems to have come out of nowhere. These have been on the market for just about a year now, and in that time they've undergone an incredible amount of hype. But is the hype real? Can these $40 obscure IEMs really compete with other IEMs costing much more? Well, the hype got me interested enough, so let's check it out. We'll just briefly take a look at the design here because the more important thing to focus on would be the sound. After all, it's precisely because of their sound signature that all the hype was created. So, if you want to get a bit more info on the design and fit of the BL-03, then check out the link in the description, which will take you to the full written review. The surprising thing about the BL-03 is that the individual earpieces actually look and feel rather premium, or at least more so than what the price tag would suggest. The only thing which makes these housings look less premium is the rather prominent seam, which joins the main housing with the part which has the nozzle. The housings have a little bit of weight to them, and they tip the scales at around 7 grams each. Overall, I think the look and feel of the product is great, especially at this price point. Unfortunately, this is where the positives of the design end for me, which means that I have to agree with the consensus on what is the biggest flaw about this product, and the only thing stopping it from being absolutely great. I am, of course, talking about the fit. The design itself is really comfortable, as there are no sharp edges or anything like that, but it's just not ergonomic at all, and this really did hinder me from just sitting back and listening to music. These have a very shallow insertion depth, and so picking the right ear tips is absolutely crucial. The most secure fit I could get was with a pair of foam tips. Unfortunately, these do not come with foam tips, so I just had to use some that were included with a different set of IEMs. As with all IEMs, the tips can and do influence the sound signature, so let's segue into that. When it comes to the sound character of the BLON, well, spoiler alert, I like them. I like them a lot. But before we get into that, let's take a look at how these measure. The BL-03 comes with two different types of silicone ear tips, and each does alter the sound signature to a very minor degree. What we have here is a generally bass dominant signature, which is then balanced reasonably well with a peak in the upper treble. Overall, this results in a mild V-shaped signature with a seemingly warm tonality. Where this type of signature really shines is that it makes music sound more organic and forgiving than what a colder and more analytical signature would. However, when you listen to music which has a very distinct and prominent bass line, perhaps something from Billie Eilish, then it becomes rather obvious that the BLON's bass can get a little in the way. SpinFit are a very popular pair of aftermarket tips, and as we can see from the graph, these do have a noticeable effect on the response graph. Practically the entire range above 100 Hz is more elevated, making the mids and lower treble more in balance with the bass. However, it does also introduce some higher peaks in the upper treble, which results in a seemingly more V-shaped signature. Then there are my favorite silicone tips, the JVC spiral dots. These affect the signature in a similar fashion to the SpinFits, but instead of raising the signature beyond 100 Hz, this time almost everything gets lowered. This creates a noticeably smoother signature, but one which is also appreciably warmer and more bloated. Unfortunately, even though I tend to prefer spiral dot tips for comfort, the design of the BLON means that not even these tips worked for me. Okay, finally, we get to the foam tips. As mentioned, to get the most secure fit, I had to resort to using foams. Some people, however, will have no problem with various silicone tips, but for those who do struggle with any of the silicone tips, foam tips are a godsend. This was especially true in my case because I also found the foam tips to give me the most enjoyable sound signature from the BL-03. To some extent, these tips also affect the signature in a similar manner to what the SpinFit tips do between 100 Hz and 1 kHz. But then, after 2 kHz, the changes aren't quite as drastic, and it totally avoids creating that accentuated peak in the upper treble. Of all the tips used, these gave me what seemed like the most balanced signature. The fact is, my opinion of what these IEMs sound like is something you've heard a gazillion times before. There's a reason why these underwent just an insane amount of hype, and the bottom line is that they really do sound good. Forget about the specific price point. The BLON sounds good at practically any price point. I've heard IEMs which cost up to 10 times as much, which simply could not even begin to hope to sound as good as these do. But I have to admit that what I'm about to say is something which will only add to the hype. The most surprising and most enjoyable part of this review was when I compared the BL-03 to the ER2XR. To my surprise, they share some very interesting similarities. As you might be aware, the ER2XR and ER2SE are my current benchmarks. The XR offers a warmer and more bassy signature, whereas the SE has the more neutral and technically accurate signature. It's what I use to judge all other IEMs against. So believe me when I say that the mere fact that the BL-03 shares some stark similarities to the XR is a massive compliment. In fact, I would comfortably go so far as to say that, to me at least, the BL-03 simply sounds like a warmer, more V-shaped and less refined version of the ER2XR. When swapping between them, the XR gave a clearer and more linear and natural sounding signature. Another thing I picked up on was that the bass on the BL-03 seemed a bit loose, whereas the XR exhibited more control in this region. It really is impressive to hear what the BL-03 can do when being compared side by side to something like the ER2XR. Do I think the XR is worth around 3 times the price of the BL-03? Well, yes, simply because we're getting an improvement in all areas. So I guess what we can take away from this review, or rather this specific comparison, is that if you perhaps already have the BL-03 and you're wondering what would be a reasonably affordable upgrade to it, then the ER2XR seems like it would fit that requirement perfectly. So, at a price of around $40, the BL-03 is an exceptionally good sounding pair of IEMs. No, it's not perfect, as it does have a few flaws in the signature here and there, and it is rather annoying to have to resort to using a pair of foam tips in order for these IEMs to be usable, or at least that was true in my case. But for the price, I really do not expect anything more. The fact is, as far as I'm concerned anyways, these IEMs absolutely do deserve every last bit of hype they got. In terms of sound quality, they honestly do obliterate many IEMs out there that cost way more. But sound quality isn't everything. And because of that extremely finicky fit, it does have a slight impact on the overall value of the BL-03. At the end of the day, if you can't get it to sit properly in the ear, then you just aren't going to get the full sound that these are capable of producing. But whatever, it is what it is. The fact remains that the BL-03 is capable of producing a very pleasing sound signature, and despite the fact that I needed to use foam tips, I still highly recommend these IEMs for the sheer amount of bang to buck value it brings to the table. So that's it for this review on the BL-03. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are well and that you are safe. That's all from me for now, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.